Welcome to the Board Edit. We want to help you to lead more boldly, serve wisely, and impact deeply.
Our goal is to equip 1 million community-minded leaders to serve with confidence. I'm your host, Craig.
And I'm your host, Dawn. Let's dive in. You know, I think because I have lived and worked in a community for a while, and there just seems to be a shortage of people that will serve on boards. Mm-hmm. And then you end up serving on multiple boards with the same people. Have you found that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same meetings with the same people in the same rooms. And it's just, it can do a disservice to the organization.
Yeah. And you know, I think when I started my career, I think I was really proud of how many boards I had been asked to serve on.
Like a badge of honor.
Yeah, kind of. And I think also in communities, there's also almost like these resume building boards, if you will. It's sort of like, you know, if you serve on this board, if you get appointed to this board, those types of things. And it's almost like you're kind of almost expected to do it once you get into service.
Yep. Well, a lot of times, like your manager or supervisor or whoever is leading you at your business, they'll ask you or they'll tap you where their term is ending and they're like, hey, I have to fill in my seat. And then it's not aligning to like what brings you joy and a mission that you're really excited about. It's serving a box or serving as a kind of obligatory.
Yeah, and I think as I've really thought about sort of our Serve Smart framework, which we can go back through for our listeners in just a few, but you know, as I've thought about our Serve Smart framework, and we've done the research in the market and how this is a framework that really helps people discern and to have discipline and to whatever calling it is they have for the mission. Honestly, I think people really have to decide how many boards they can really serve on.
Yeah, well, and to serve well, right? And to serve that's doing justice to the mission, that is giving you the most fulfillment out of your service, and everyone being able to walk away feeling good about that, feeling confident about that. I think I've seen where, especially organizations where funding is involved, conflicts of interest can happen really quickly when you are serving on multiple boards, because inevitably the tough conversation comes up. And as a representative, or being in our framework for represent, you just can't advocate for two organizations if there is a decision from one that is impacting another. And it creates uncertainty, it creates conflict, and people walk away not feeling good.
Well, and I think people walk away feeling unclear.
Right.
They feel unclear about where your, I hate to say loyalties lie, but maybe loyalties lie. And I don't think that I thought about that as much earlier in my career in terms of the stewardship, in terms of finding myself in conflicts I didn't expect to find myself in. And I think it all goes back to how many boards that we can serve on. And I really wanted to have this conversation because I think it is vital. And I think people feel sometimes arm twisted because of obligation or, you know, so, I mean, I've been told, you know, no one else can, you know, do this. We really need your expertise, especially when you get to a season of your career where people know that you've led a capital campaign or you've been super, responsible, of course, but you've also, you know, you've gotten some recognition and you've had some success. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And people really want that. And you can see as an individual how you could benefit that organization. However, if you go back to where am I most aligned, what is my greatest calling, and then how many boards can I be on, really and truly?
Yep. So topic of today is conversation and what that a lot of times I think it's overcommitting, and for whatever reason, right? I mean, it can be because you're asked, or because you can add value, or because you want to share your skill set, which that's not a bad thing either. But the overcommitting piece can be detrimental.
Yes. And, one of the things that I do, you're going to laugh at me, but I find a paper calendar is most helpful.
What a boomer. No, just kidding.
I am. But and I actually had a board member who shared with me because she would, and actually it was around her philanthropy, but I think it really does apply to, obviously, when you're serving on a board, your philanthropy is involved. But she said, really and truly, we pick our top three. Yeah. So when we think about like our time, again, when you're divided into 24 hours and 8 hours is sleep, 8 hours is whatever you're doing to pay the bills, and usually it's more than that. Well, you've only got 8 hours left in a 24-hour day. So if you are on more than three, and I really think it's three, I think three is a lot.
There is a lot, yeah.
Because if you truly live into this Serve Smart framework and do it well and bring the joy, yep, and you're prepared and you're aligned with the mission, and you can show up at community events, and you can represent maybe when the CEO can't or another board leader can't. I don't know how you have more, even when we think we do, but if you were to look at your calendar and see where priorities are, because the last thing we want is for an individual to devote more time to a nonprofit or to any board role than they do their own family.
Right.
Because that is not the legacy that we want to have in community.
Right. Well, and that's some of the hidden costs to overcommitting, is that family bandwidth and making sure that you're showing up there first. But then also when you're showing up in the community and someone knows that you're on 18 different boards, like, what hat are you wearing? Like, who are you representing today? Like, what name tag do you need to put on? And, if people in the public don't have clarity around that, then it almost feels like a split personality thing, because you're not in alignment. You have competing priorities, and you're not able to get home by dinner.
No, and I think one of the things that was kind of a tripping point for me was, being a part of a board, but then also representing another nonprofit, even though similar mission, similar ties as a CEO. It gets confusing. Like, you're right. People don't know what hat you're showing up with. Yeah. And I also find that if people are serving a similar role, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, even like just keeping all the facts straight is hard.
Yeah. Things start blending and becoming very gray. And then roles and responsibilities don't have clear like delineation marks, and just blurred lines. Could cue that song as some backup music.
Well, and I also think too, every board kind of has an expectation of what you give. Right. Right. And I do think, again, there are different types of boards, right? There's the operating board, there's a governing board,
fundraising.
There's fundraising boards. I mean, and I think that's a part of it too. Yeah. Because again, I think you get into a situation if you are in a point in your career where someone else can direct you to be on a board, but then you really have this calling and mission to be somewhere else, but your work life wants you to be over here. Again, it's using our resources that we have coming out in our book and our courses to be able to discern, because sometimes we have to like see it written out. Like we have to have a matrix. We have to go, okay. And I think one of the greatest things that I learned to say, because I'm not a person who likes to say no often. It's just not part of my nature. And when I'm very clear about what my three priorities are in philanthropy and in service, I can say, I'm not going to be able to show up in a way that I know you need me to. Right. Not until like this time. Yeah. Let me think about perhaps someone who might be looking for a similar opportunity that I could vouch for them, or I could put my name to them, that they would be amazing. Yeah. and thank you so much for asking, because it is an honor they thought of you.
Yeah. Well, and some of the conversation today is providing that script too, and how to have that out. But I think a lot of our content and with the book and our training, it is very much centered from the board member's perspective, to the points that you were just talking about and being tapped to serve in multiple things. But if we flip that perspective around from that of the organization, aside from the type of board that leads that organization, organizations go through different stages of a life cycle too. And when you're a new organization, your needs are going to look a lot different than an organization that has been around for decades. And the approach, the strategy, the operationalization of the mission, like it's just going to be so different. And if you're the type of board member that wants to, make the peanut butter and jelly or serve the lunch, like that's not going to be a board that isn't in that level of their life stage too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, that's a great point about life cycle. And we probably need to unpack that a little bit, I think, because there are multiple times sometimes in a nonprofit's life. And if funding ends, then you might have to step in and be a fundraiser, right? Because a grant situation or sometimes a family's philanthropy changes, or the needs in a community change, and you have to ramp up. And if you're like, I didn't know I was going to need to be called to several fundraising events, or we were going to have to do a full court press to raise the gap in funding that is now here. And it just, and then you're on another nonprofit in the same community where the same thing is happening. Well, and these things happen. I mean, it's a very predictable cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you can't show up the same way that consistently when there are multiple of the same types of needs, right? Another kind of place that I see it is when organizations are growing, and the strategy shifts and the conversation shifts with a board that was recruited without strategy thinkers and people who are very tactical and want that type of experience too. So then you're trying to have these deep level strategic conversations and it's just silence around the board because those people were recruited with a very different expectation and need of the value of their skill sets at the time. So then how do you marry that? And if you're serving on multiple boards and you feel really successful on one, but not very confident on another, like it's going to create some of those gaps too.
Yes. And you know what just popped in my head as you were talking is that I don't think people are also aware that there are committees. So it's not just that you're being asked to serve on a board.
Right.
You also have committees. So when you were talking about like the whole strategy and the tactical piece of things, a lot of times that work alignment has to be placed in a committee role, hopefully.
Right.
That's really what you want to see. But I don't think any of us expect that.
Right.
And sometimes the committee that we're asked to serve on is opposite the way that we want to serve. I've always said, I can be on a finance committee, but I'm not going to necessarily be excited about it.
Or want to serve as a treasurer, right?
No. Negative.
Correct. Yeah. Well,
negative.
And I think that's where the serve part of our framework comes in, because that's where discernment kicks in for understanding what that obligation looks like and what the ask is for those board members. And, if it's minimized and it's like, oh, well, it's just a board meeting every couple months, and then that needs to become monthly because of funding changes or whatever reason. And then you add in working committees. Oh, and then there's a task force because we always have to have a strategic planning task force, right? So now you're like 3 levels deep and you thought you were only committing to a governing level type engagement that really creates alignment issues and how people show up.
Yes. And so I think a great question, and we didn't put this in the book. We need to, it'll be our second revision, right? Is to say, okay, so if I say yes to this board, what do you anticipate a year's calendar looking like for me?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest tools that I've used with my boards is we plan out and map out our meetings for an entire year in advance. We have key themes based off of when we know certain things will pop. So, our audit, which typically comes at the beginning of Q2, like that is that meeting. We know certain funding contracts have to be approved by the end of Q4 to go into the next fiscal year. So there's just these natural times where we definitely need people to show up. And beyond kind of the calendar piece, I've used a win-win agreement for my boards where it very clearly delineates what is expected of you, what is expected of me, and then together what we both will deliver. Because again, this goes back to feeling confidence through service, showing up well and serving smart. And you have to have those conversations. So using the SERVE framework, being able to discern that and really knowing kind of what questions to ask of that staff or that board leadership if you're considering to serve on another board.
Yeah. And, you made a joke about the treasurer piece. I'm a social worker by trade. So I've been a secretary of many organizations.
Yes. Yep.
And led some others. But I think this piece. So what do you think, we're talking about, how many boards should we serve on? So let's say you find someone who is serving as a chair of like more than one board or a treasurer of more than one board. How do you think this framework of ours would be able to help someone discern, and maybe they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have committed to that? Like, how do you help someone kind of get out of that log jam, if you will?
Yeah.
Because it's very time intensive to do it well.
Right. So I think it goes back to having awareness that isn't the best opportunity for either party, right? The board member or the organization, and having language to understand that there could be alignment issues, there could be vitality issues, motivation issues, and making sure that those people can do a reality check and really reflect on, are these organizations in alignment with what I want to give my time, my very limited time of 8 hours or less a day, so that it's fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that it matters the type or scope or size of the nonprofit in terms of how many?
On the board?
No, in terms of like the size of a budget, or
Gotcha.
You've got a new startup nonprofit, or you've got a nonprofit in a capital campaign, or you've got a nonprofit who might just be out of business within the next few months. Mm-hmm. Like, do you also think it sort of matters, going back to the life cycle point, like how many you can really serve on? Or do you think like, look, any nonprofit can wind up at any of those at any time?
I think those two variables exist. At a minimum, to have minimal awareness of the dangers of serving on multiple boards, there is just that basic understanding that can be an issue. But then if you layer an additional level of discernment to what that organization is going through or what their strategic roadmap for the next year looks like, if you don't feel that you can add value to that, then that should be a sign. I mean, if you see on their calendar that they have a fundraising event every month and you travel for work and are consistently out of town, that will cause you to miss it. And then you feel guilt over not being there. Like, that doesn't feel confident.
No. And that's when people can say, I don't know, I haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think again, that question of being able to say, so what would my year realistically look like, right? Because I have been guilty in a staff role, right? Saying, oh no, we only meet once a month.
Mm-hmm. Right? Suckers. Yeah. It's never once a month. Spoiler alert. No. It is rarely once a month. Maybe I should say that. Yeah.
Right. But, and for me, authentically, right, until I started keeping a paper calendar so that I didn't overbook, so that I did allow space between meetings. So I'm not coming in with my hair on fire kind of thing,
Yeah.
That until I started doing that, like, I don't even think I realized the amount of time the service takes, because it's not just the 90-minute meeting. it's the at least 30 minutes to review what's in my inbox. Then I have to travel to it, and then I need to
There's probably a coffee stop in there too to like get some energy, right?
Maybe. And there's all these variable of time that eats up that 8 hours of time. And again, we don't want to discourage anyone from serving, but it really is sort of that clarity. And also, I think what has been super affirming to kind of figure out like what are those top 3 is ask my family. Ask the people I'm around. Like, I have this opportunity and this is what they do. And as a family, explore it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just something I got designated to do, but it's something that the family can show up and feel very joyful in it. And I don't think we can do that with 8 different boards.
Yeah, no. And actually that goes to the dedication in our book to our families, because they're the ones that see it firsthand when we show up after a good meeting or a bad meeting, what is bringing that energy home and where we feel fulfilled and where we can lead by example, especially with children. Like, how are we modeling that behavior? And if we come home complaining about a complete waste of 2 hours, like that doesn't feel like an alignment. So for this topic, I mean, we've talked about the problem and that level of discernment to do an alignment check, to do a capacity check, understanding the impact that you can make if that aligns with where the organization's going. And then just the seasonality. Is this the right time in your life? Like, those, I think, are the litmus tests that people can use if they are in a situation of serving on multiple boards and need to do a gut check.
Absolutely.
So then what happens next? What's the script? Give them an out, Dawn.
Yeah, I think it's knowing that. So I'm going to kind of put on a therapist hat.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Because
I am
Why not?
one.
Why
all
not?
right. So I'm going to pull, because I've seen people do this to themselves.
Yeah.
Is I think, what is it about serving on all these boards, knowing that, to use my phrase, running around with your hair on fire. Well, that's called dysregulation, right? If you're paying attention to what the energy give or take is from you, and you're finding that you become dysregulated sitting in the meeting, after the meeting, or you could even say it's a piling problem. Right? It's a piling problem. Yep. I mean, I've literally worked myself with a coach to really look at everything I had committed to.
Dig out of the hole a little bit.
Yeah. And I think as a seasoned professional and someone who is just called to serve, and you can see so much of what you can do, and you have a personality that is interested in so much, you can find yourself with a piling problem. Yeah. And that means that you're dysregulated, right? You're staying up late, you're burning the midnight. Well, that's not good.
Right.
That's not good for your health. It's not good. It's noble, I guess. And I think some people can get a little confused with nonprofit service and nobility and sort of what it means. But we can't ever be our best self for anything unless we're clear on where our energy needs to be.
Yep. And that clarity, I think, is the piece that cuts through that, and just having that self-awareness, being able to reflect and to check in whether this is an alignment, and being really, really clear on where you want to spend your time and energy.
Yeah. And I think that if we do that, I think that's where we can be our biggest gift. And it's honestly why I wanted us to have this conversation, because it's like what you have said, like, it's okay to have an out.
Right.
Like, it's really okay. And to have courage in that conversation, it doesn't mean that you failed. Sometimes it just means you've overcommitted, and you don't need to have like a breakup.
Right.
Right.
No one's taking the dog or anything. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's, but some people do treat these things like you're going through a huge loss, and we've seen the grievance, the grief that can happen when people's limits are up. You can't get me to serve on a board unless I got a term limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that board doesn't have a term limit, red flag number one, because they might have a culture of using and abusing and just not giving that out to those people and not doing right by them.
Yeah.
I think the other observation that I've had over the years is, to how you started the episode of seeing the same people in the same rooms, different title on the agenda, but there's such a repetition of that, if you're seeing that as a board member or even with an organization, like there is opportunity to train and to lift up that next generation of board members. And when I say generation, I don't mean age, but just that next group of equipping them with things like the Serve Smart framework and making sure that there is clarity and alignment on what their ask is and to do really good board orientation. Because if we're seeing the same people, then they don't feel confident advocating for different and multiple causes. There's just that inherent conflict.
Yeah.
But it presents an opportunity where there can be some really good engagement, some really good training, and to bring up that next group of servant leaders.
Yeah. And we're talking, of course, about nonprofit boards because that's kind of our niche and why we're doing this. But really, this applies. We've both been in civic leadership, for-profit boards, appointed boards, all of the boards. These are all considerations that we have to make.
Yeah. And they're all very consistent challenges that all those boards have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate our listeners listening in, and we hope it's been helpful.
Yeah.
And we hope that you'll tune in and maybe do some assessments. And if you're the one that you feel like we're talking to you because you serve on 9 boards, we hope that you'll take this under advisement because we want you to be around.
That's right.
And we want you to pick the top 2 or 3 and really discern what is your best calling and where are your gifts best used.
Yeah, absolutely.
All righty.
Absolutely.
I think we're done.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. See you again soon. You want to do some cheers with our confident member?
That's right.
Yeah. Our confident company cups.
We'll see you next time.
Want a deeper dive? Grab the Confident Board Member. It's packed with stories, tools, and our Serve Smart framework. We want to help you to lead with clarity. It's available now at theconfidentcompanyus.com.